The Art of a Simple Life, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Peace. Published by Timeless Audiobook. Introduction. Peace has never been a product of having more. Across centuries and civilizations, the wisest men and women discovered that a calm mind, a content heart, and a meaningful life rarely come from accumulation. They come from simplicity. While the world changes, human nature remains remarkably the same. The distractions may look different, the tools may become more advanced, and the pace of life may grow faster, but the search for peace continues generation after generation. Ancient philosophers, teachers, and thinkers understood a truth that is easy to forget in modern times. Life becomes lighter when we stop carrying what we do not need. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It is not about rejecting ambition, comfort, or progress. It is about removing the unnecessary so that the essential can finally breathe. It is about creating space for clarity, gratitude, purpose, and inner calm. In this audiobook, we will explore timeless principles that have guided thoughtful people for centuries. We will learn how to reduce the noise that fills our days, how to free ourselves from endless wanting, how to focus on what truly matters, and how to build a life that feels rich without being complicated. Along the way, we will discover practical lessons that can be applied in everyday life, regardless of age, profession, or circumstance. This is not a book about escaping the modern world. It is a book about living wisely within it. The goal is not perfection, but peace. The goal is not to control every part of life, but to understand which parts deserve our attention and which parts can be released. As you listen, allow yourself to slow down. Consider these chapters an invitation to return to something simple, something enduring, and something that has been available all along. A life lived with greater clarity, intention, and peace. Chapter 1. Remove what adds no value. A simple life does not begin with acquiring something new. It begins with letting something go. This idea may seem strange in a world that constantly encourages accumulation. Every day, messages surround us telling us that happiness is one purchase away, success is one achievement away, and fulfillment is waiting just beyond the next milestone. Yet the wisdom of the ages points in a different direction. Ancient thinkers understood that peace rarely enters a crowded life. It flourishes when space is created. The first step toward simplicity is not asking, "What else do I need?" but rather, "What can I remove?" Life has a way of filling itself. Closets become crowded, calendars become packed, minds become overwhelmed with unfinished thoughts, worries, obligations, and expectations. None of this usually happens all at once. It accumulates slowly, almost invisibly. One commitment leads to another. One possession becomes 10. One responsibility grows into many. Over time, people find themselves carrying far more than they ever intended. The burden becomes so familiar that they stop noticing its weight. They assume exhaustion is normal. They assume stress is simply part of modern living. Yet much of what drains us is not necessary. It is simply unexamined. Ancient wisdom often emphasized the power of subtraction. Sculptors remove stone to reveal a masterpiece. Gardeners prune branches so healthy growth can flourish. Wise people understand that improvement is not always about addition. Sometimes the greatest progress comes from removing what no longer serves a purpose. Simplicity requires courage because letting go can feel uncomfortable. We become attached not only to possessions, but also to routines, opinions, expectations, and even identities. We hold on to things because they are familiar, not because they are valuable. Consider the story of Garrett Lawson, an architect living in Chicago. Garrett had spent years building what appeared to be a successful life. His apartment was filled with expensive furniture, shelves packed with books he never read, and countless items he had purchased during busy periods of his career. His schedule was equally crowded. Professional organizations, networking events, side projects, and social obligations consumed nearly every evening. From the outside, everything looked impressive. Internally, however, he felt constantly rushed and strangely dissatisfied. One weekend, after feeling particularly exhausted, Garrett decided to take a hard look at his life. He began with his apartment. He removed boxes of unused items, donated clothes he no longer wore, and cleared surfaces that had become storage spaces. Then he examined his schedule. He stepped away from commitments that added little value and declined invitations that felt more obligatory than meaningful. Within a few months, something unexpected happened. Garrett did not feel like he had less. He felt like he had more. More time, more energy, more clarity, more enjoyment of the things that truly mattered. By removing what added no value, he discovered a sense of freedom that years of accumulation had failed to provide. The lesson extends beyond physical belongings. Mental clutter can be even more damaging than physical clutter. Old resentments, constant comparisons, unnecessary arguments, and worries about things beyond our control occupy valuable space within the mind. Every thought demands energy. Every unresolved burden quietly consumes attention. A simple life requires learning to ask difficult questions. Is this concern worth carrying? Is this habit helping me? Is this commitment aligned with the life I want to live? If the answer is no, perhaps it is time to release it. One of the greatest misconceptions about simplicity is that it requires sacrifice. In reality, simplicity is often an exchange. You exchange distraction for focus. You exchange busyness for presence. You exchange clutter for clarity. You exchange pressure for peace. While something may leave your life, something more valuable often takes its place. The goal is not emptiness. The goal is making room for what matters. As you move through this audiobook, remember that simplicity is not achieved in a single day. It is a practice of continuous refinement. Every so often, life asks us to pause and examine what we are carrying. Some things deserve to stay, many do not. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference. A peaceful life is rarely built by adding more and more. More often, it is built by removing what adds no value until what remains is truly worth keeping. Chapter 2. Want less, enjoy more. A quiet truth sits at the heart of nearly every ancient philosophy. The more we demand from life, the harder it becomes to enjoy it. This idea may seem backward at first. Modern culture often teaches the opposite. We are encouraged to dream bigger, earn more, buy more, experience more, and become more. Ambition itself is not the problem. Growth is not the problem. The difficulty begins when desire becomes endless. When there is always something else we must have before we can feel satisfied, contentment remains permanently out of reach. Think about how often happiness is postponed. A person tells himself he will relax after the next promotion. Someone else believes she will finally feel secure after reaching a certain number in her bank account. Another person waits for a larger house, a newer car, a better title, or greater recognition. The mind quietly creates a condition for happiness. It says, "Not yet, just a little more." The problem is that the finish line keeps moving. As soon as one desire is fulfilled, another quickly takes its place. What once seemed essential soon becomes ordinary, and the cycle begins again. Ancient thinkers observed this pattern thousands of years ago. They understood that human desire can behave like a fire. Feed it, and it often grows larger. The answer was not to eliminate all desires. That would be impossible. Instead, they encouraged people to examine their desires carefully. Which desires lead to a meaningful life? Which desires create endless restlessness? Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. A simple life does not require giving up dreams. It requires refusing to become a servant to every craving that appears. One of the greatest sources of peace comes from appreciating what is already present. Gratitude may sound like a simple idea, but it has extraordinary power. The mind cannot fully appreciate and endlessly complain at the same time. When attention shifts toward what is available instead of what is missing, something changes. Life begins to feel richer. The same home feels more comfortable. The same relationships feel more valuable. The same ordinary moments become easier to enjoy. Nothing outside has changed, yet the experience of life becomes different. Consider Brooke Whitman, a luxury retail manager in Seattle. Her career placed her in constant contact with expensive products, exclusive events, and affluent clients. Every day she was surrounded by reminders of what she did not have. Over time, she developed the habit of measuring her success against the lifestyle she observed around her. A nicer apartment seemed necessary. More expensive vacations felt important. Higher income appeared to be the answer to her growing dissatisfaction. Yet, despite receiving promotions and earning more money than she had imagined years earlier, the feeling of fulfillment never lasted. One evening, after reflecting on how exhausted she felt from constantly chasing the next upgrade, Brooke made a simple decision. For 6 months, she would stop pursuing unnecessary purchases and focus instead on appreciating what she already owned. She spent more time with friends, took long walks, read books she had neglected, and became more intentional with her money. To her surprise, she felt lighter. The pressure that had quietly followed her for years began to fade. She realized that much of her dissatisfaction had not come from lacking something important. It had come from believing she always needed something more. This lesson applies far beyond material possessions. People can become attached to wanting more praise, more recognition, more certainty, more control, and more approval. The human mind is remarkably creative when it comes to inventing new requirements for happiness. Yet peace often arrives when those requirements are reduced. Imagine how different life would feel if you stopped demanding that every day be perfect. Imagine the freedom of no longer needing everyone to agree with you. Imagine releasing the expectation that life must unfold exactly according to your plans. Wanting less does not mean lowering your standards or abandoning your goals. It means learning the difference between healthy aspiration and endless dissatisfaction. Healthy aspiration inspires growth while allowing gratitude for the present. Endless dissatisfaction destroys appreciation and turns life into a constant search for what is missing. One creates energy, the other creates frustration. There is also a practical reason why wanting less leads to greater enjoyment. Every possession requires attention, every unnecessary goal demands energy, every desire occupies mental space. As desires multiply, so do worries, responsibilities, and distractions. Simplicity asks an important question. What if enough is closer than you think? What if the life you are working so hard to create already contains many of the things you have been searching for? The ancient world repeatedly returned to the idea of sufficiency. Wise people learned to recognize the point at which more no longer improved their lives. They understood that contentment is not found at the end of acquisition, but at the end of unnecessary wanting. This perspective does not make life smaller. In many ways, it makes life larger. Ordinary pleasures become more enjoyable. Relationships become more meaningful. Success becomes something to appreciate rather than something to chase endlessly. As you continue your journey toward a simpler life, pay attention to the desires that quietly shape your days. Ask yourself whether they are helping you or controlling you. Some desires deserve your effort. Others deserve your release. The more carefully you choose them, the more freedom you will experience. In the end, enjoyment grows not from having everything you want, but from discovering how little you truly need to live well. Chapter 3. Slow down before life forces you to. Speed has become one of the defining characteristics of modern life. Faster communication, faster transportation, faster decisions, and faster access to information have created the impression that moving quickly is always a virtue. Many people rush from one task to the next without pause, believing that constant motion is a sign of productivity and success. Yet ancient wisdom offers a different perspective. It reminds us that there is a significant difference between movement and progress. A person can be moving very fast and still be heading in the wrong direction. When life becomes rushed, awareness begins to disappear. Meals are eaten without being tasted. Conversations are heard without being fully listened to. Days pass without being truly experienced. The mind becomes so focused on what comes next that it loses contact with what is happening now. This is one of the hidden costs of hurry. It steals the richness from ordinary moments. It transforms life into a series of tasks to complete rather than experiences to live. Ancient philosophers often spoke about the importance of deliberate living. They understood that wisdom rarely emerges from a frantic mind. Clarity requires space. Good judgment requires reflection. Inner peace requires moments of stillness. A river that moves too violently becomes cloudy and difficult to see through. In the same way, a mind constantly rushing from one concern to another struggles to see things clearly. Slowing down is not about becoming lazy or unproductive. It is about creating the conditions necessary for thoughtful living. Many people believe they will slow down someday. They imagine that peace will arrive after the next promotion, after the children grow older, after a project is completed, or after financial goals are achieved. Yet life has a way of continually presenting new responsibilities. If slowing down is postponed indefinitely, it rarely happens. This is why it must become a conscious choice rather than a future plan. Waiting for life to become less busy often leads to disappointment, because life itself is not responsible for creating peace. That responsibility belongs to us. Trevor Hale, an insurance broker from Denver, learned this lesson in a difficult way. His days were scheduled almost down to the minute. He woke up checking emails, rushed through breakfast, spent his workday moving from meeting to meeting, and often continued working long into the evening. Even during family dinners, his attention was divided between conversations and notifications on his phone. He told himself that things would calm down once he reached certain career goals. Year after year, however, those goals changed, and the pace only increased. One afternoon, while driving between appointments, Trevor realized he could barely remember the previous few months. He had been so busy managing his schedule that he had stopped truly experiencing his life. That realization unsettled him. He began making small adjustments. He left space between meetings. He took short walks without his phone. He stopped treating every moment as an opportunity to accomplish something. None of these changes dramatically altered his career, but they transformed his daily experience. For the first time in years, he felt present. He noticed things he had previously overlooked. Conversations became more meaningful. Ordinary moments became enjoyable again. By slowing down voluntarily, he avoided reaching the point where exhaustion might have forced him to stop. One reason slowing down feels uncomfortable is that it often reveals things we have been avoiding. Busyness can become a distraction from difficult questions. Am I spending my time wisely? Am I pursuing what truly matters? Am I living according to my values? Constant activity leaves little room for such reflection. Slowing down creates that room. While the answers may not always be easy, they are necessary for a meaningful life. Another benefit of slowing down is that it improves the quality of our decisions. Important choices rarely benefit from haste. Whether we are considering a career change, a financial commitment, or a personal relationship, thoughtful reflection often leads to better outcomes than impulsive action. Ancient teachers understood that wisdom develops gradually. It grows through observation, patience, and careful consideration. A rushed mind tends to react. A calm mind is able to respond. It is also worth remembering that many of life's greatest pleasures cannot be rushed. Friendship deepens over time. Trust develops slowly. Meaningful work requires patience. Personal growth unfolds gradually. Nature itself offers this lesson everywhere we look. Trees do not rush their growth. Seasons do not hurry their arrival. Yet each accomplishes exactly what it is meant to accomplish. There is wisdom in that rhythm. Human beings often create unnecessary pressure by expecting immediate results from processes that naturally require time. As you continue through this audiobook, consider where hurry has entered your own life. Perhaps it appears in your schedule, your thinking, your conversations, or your expectations. Ask yourself whether the pace you are maintaining is helping you or harming you. A simpler life is not necessarily a slower life in every respect, but it is a more intentional one. It recognizes that peace cannot thrive in constant urgency. The goal is not to withdraw from responsibility or ambition. The goal is to move through life with greater awareness. When you slow down, you begin to notice what truly deserves your attention. You make better decisions. You appreciate ordinary moments more fully. Most importantly, you stop treating life as something that is always happening later. You begin living it now, while it is actually taking place. Chapter 4. Guard your mind from unnecessary noise. Peace is not only threatened by what happens around you, it is often threatened by what enters your mind. Every day, countless voices compete for your attention. News headlines demand a reaction. Advertisements tell you what you should want. Social media encourages comparison. Opinions arrive from every direction. Information flows continuously, often faster than the mind can process it. While access to information can be valuable, there comes a point when more information stops being helpful and starts becoming noise. Ancient thinkers lived in a world without smartphones, television, or the internet. Yet they understood something that remains true today. The mind becomes shaped by what it repeatedly consumes. Just as the body is influenced by the food it receives, the mind is influenced by the ideas, conversations, images, and emotions that enter it each day. This is why wisdom begins with awareness. If you are not careful about what enters your mind, someone else will decide for you. One of the challenges of modern life is that noise rarely announces itself as noise. It often disguises itself as something important. A person may spend hours consuming information without gaining any practical benefit. Another may follow every headline, believing it is necessary to remain informed while becoming increasingly anxious and overwhelmed. Others may scroll endlessly through opinions, arguments, and distractions that leave them mentally exhausted but no wiser than before. The issue is not information itself. The issue is quantity without purpose. A simple life requires learning the difference between what deserves your attention and what merely demands it. These are not the same thing. Many things demand attention because they are designed to provoke strong emotions. Outrage attracts attention. Fear attracts attention. Conflict attracts attention. Yet what truly deserves attention is often quieter. Meaningful relationships, thoughtful work, personal growth, health, gratitude, and inner peace rarely compete as aggressively for your focus. Because of this, they can easily be neglected unless you choose them intentionally. Paige Monroe, a media consultant from Portland, found herself caught in this trap. Her profession required her to stay informed about trends, news, and public conversations. Over time, however, staying informed gradually turned into constant consumption. She checked updates first thing in the morning and continued throughout the day. During meals, she read articles. Before bed, she scrolled through news feeds and social media. She believed she was being responsible and productive, yet she noticed a growing sense of mental fatigue. Her mind felt crowded, restless, and constantly on edge. Eventually, Paige decided to experiment with reducing her information intake. She limited news consumption to specific times of the day. She unfollowed accounts that consistently generated negativity without providing value. She replaced some of her screen time with reading books and spending time outdoors. Within a few weeks, she noticed something remarkable. She was still informed, but she felt calmer. Her concentration improved. Her thoughts became clearer. Most importantly, she realized that much of what had consumed her attention had added very little to her life. The noise had seemed important only because it had been constant. This lesson extends beyond media and technology. Noise can also come from conversations. Not every discussion deserves your participation. Not every argument deserves your energy. Many people spend enormous amounts of time defending opinions, reacting to criticism, or involving themselves in conflicts that have little relevance to their lives. Ancient wisdom often encouraged restraint. The wise person understood that silence can be more powerful than reaction. Choosing not to engage is sometimes the clearest expression of strength. Another source of noise comes from internal dialogue. While external distractions receive much attention, many people carry constant mental chatter within themselves. Worries about the future, regrets about the past, imagined scenarios, self-criticism, and endless analysis can create as much disturbance as any outside influence. A noisy mind struggles to experience peace because it is never fully present. It is always somewhere else, replaying, predicting, or judging. Learning to quiet this internal noise requires practice. It begins with observing your thoughts rather than automatically believing every one of them. Not every worry deserves attention. Not every fear reflects reality. Not every negative thought contains wisdom. The mind produces countless thoughts every day, many of which are repetitive and unhelpful. Simplicity involves developing the ability to let some of them pass without attachment. There is a reason ancient traditions placed such importance on reflection, solitude, and stillness. These practices create distance from noise. They allow a person to hear something deeper than the constant demands of the outside world. In moments of quiet, priorities become clearer, values become easier to recognize, decisions become less reactive and more intentional. As you continue this journey toward a simpler life, take a moment to consider what is filling your mind each day. Ask yourself whether the information, conversations, and influences surrounding you are contributing to peace or stealing it. Every piece of noise that enters your life occupies space that could be used for something more meaningful. Protecting your mind is not selfish. It is necessary. Just as you would not allow strangers to leave clutter throughout your home, you should not allow unnecessary noise to take control of your thoughts. A peaceful life is built not only by choosing what to include, but also by choosing what to exclude. The more carefully you guard your attention, the more room you create for clarity, wisdom, and calm. In a noisy world, protecting your mind may be one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Chapter 5. Choose enough before more chooses you. One of the most powerful decisions you can make in life is deciding what is enough. At first, this may sound like a simple question, but it reaches into nearly every area of human experience. How much money is enough? How much success is enough? How much recognition, comfort, achievement, or possession is enough? Many people spend years pursuing these things without ever stopping to define their destination. As a result, they continue moving forward without knowing where they are trying to arrive. Ancient wisdom repeatedly returned to the idea of sufficiency. Wise men and women understood that a person who cannot recognize enough will never experience contentment. This is not because they lack opportunities or resources. It is because their standard keeps moving. Every accomplishment creates the need for another accomplishment. Every gain becomes the baseline for the next pursuit. The result is a life spent chasing rather than living. Modern culture often celebrates endless growth. Businesses seek growth. Careers seek growth. Investments seek growth. While growth can be beneficial, problems arise when the desire for more becomes automatic rather than intentional. When more becomes the default goal, people rarely pause to ask whether what they already have is serving them well. They become so focused on expansion that they lose sight of enjoyment. Life gradually turns into a race with no finish line. There is an important difference between growth and greed, though greed is not always about money. A person can be greedy for attention, greedy for status, greedy for praise, or greedy for control. Greed is simply the inability to be satisfied. It is the belief that fulfillment always exists, somewhere beyond the present moment. Ancient thinkers recognized that this mindset creates permanent restlessness because it places happiness in the future and keeps it there. The challenge is that wanting more often feels reasonable. After all, ambition has helped countless people improve their lives. The problem is not ambition itself. The problem occurs when ambition becomes disconnected from purpose. Imagine climbing a mountain only to realize you never truly wanted to be on that mountain in the first place. Many people spend years pursuing goals they inherited from society, family expectations, or cultural pressure rather than goals that genuinely reflect their values. They reach milestones only to discover that the satisfaction they expected never arrives. Logan Pierce, a financial advisor from Dallas, experienced this realization firsthand. Early in his career, he set ambitious income targets for himself. Each time he reached one, he immediately created a higher target. He worked longer hours, accepted more clients, and devoted increasing amounts of energy to expanding his business. From the outside, his success was undeniable. Yet he noticed an unsettling pattern. Every achievement brought only temporary satisfaction. Within weeks, his attention shifted toward the next objective. He was winning the game but not enjoying it. One evening, after missing another family gathering because of work, Logan began questioning what he was actually pursuing. He realized he had spent years increasing numbers without defining what enough looked like. After careful reflection, he established clear boundaries. He identified the level of income that comfortably supported his family and allowed him to save for the future. Beyond that point, he chose to prioritize time, health, and relationships rather than constant expansion. To his surprise, his quality of life improved dramatically. He did not stop being successful. He simply stopped allowing the pursuit of more to control every decision. This lesson extends far beyond finances. The principle of enough can be applied to nearly everything. There comes a point where additional possessions create more maintenance than enjoyment. There comes a point where additional commitments create more stress than fulfillment. There comes a point where additional information creates more confusion than wisdom. The challenge is recognizing where that point exists in your own life. One reason simplicity feels so liberating is that it frees you from the endless pressure of accumulation. When you define enough, you create a boundary that protects your peace. Without such a boundary, the demands of more can expand indefinitely. There will always be someone with a larger house, a more impressive title, a greater income, or a bigger audience. Comparison ensures that the pursuit of more never ends. Sufficiency allows you to step off that treadmill and evaluate your life on your own terms. Choosing enough is not about settling for less than you are capable of achieving. It is about understanding that achievement alone cannot provide lasting peace. A person who constantly reaches for more without appreciating what already exists often finds themselves trapped in perpetual dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, someone who understands sufficiency can enjoy growth without becoming dependent on it. They pursue goals because they find them meaningful, not because they believe those goals will finally make them whole. Ancient philosophers often viewed freedom differently than modern society does. Today, freedom is frequently associated with having more options, more resources, and more opportunities. Yet many ancient thinkers believed true freedom came from needing less. The fewer things required for your happiness, the more independent you become. When your peace depends on endless acquisition, your peace remains fragile. When your peace comes from appreciating enough, it becomes much harder for circumstances to take it away. As you reflect on your own life, consider where the pursuit of more may be creating unnecessary pressure. Ask yourself what enough looks like in the areas that matter most. Not what society tells you is enough, not what comparison suggests is enough. Your answer may be different from anyone else's, and that is perfectly acceptable. The goal is not to stop growing. The goal is to grow with intention rather than compulsion. A simple life begins to emerge when you stop measuring success solely by accumulation. It becomes possible to enjoy what you have, appreciate where you are, and pursue the future without being consumed by it. In the end, one of the greatest forms of wisdom is knowing when more stops adding value and enough begins creating peace. Chapter 6. Create daily islands of peace. Peace is often imagined as something distant. People picture it arriving after a major life change, after a difficult season passes, or after circumstances finally align in their favor. Yet one of the oldest lessons in the art of simple living is that peace is not something we stumble upon by accident. It is something we intentionally create. It grows from small choices repeated consistently, not from perfect conditions. A peaceful life is usually built through peaceful moments, and those moments must be protected. The ancient world understood the value of retreat. Philosophers sought quiet places to think. Teachers withdrew from crowds to reflect. Writers, artists, and thinkers throughout history recognized that constant activity leaves little room for wisdom. They knew that the mind requires periods of rest, just as the body does. Without those periods, life becomes one long stream of reactions. A person moves from task to task, responsibility to responsibility, without ever pausing long enough to reconnect with themselves. One reason modern life feels so overwhelming is that many people have lost the habit of being still. Every spare moment is filled. A few minutes of waiting becomes an opportunity to check a phone. A quiet evening becomes another chance to consume entertainment. Silence feels unfamiliar. In some cases, it even feels uncomfortable. Yet the absence of quiet comes at a cost. Without stillness, the mind never fully settles. It remains occupied, stimulated, and restless. Creating daily islands of peace means deliberately setting aside moments that belong only to you. These moments do not need to be long. They do not require special equipment, expensive retreats, or dramatic lifestyle changes. What matters is intention. A peaceful morning walk, 10 minutes of quiet reflection, sitting with a cup of coffee before the day begins, reading a few pages of a thoughtful book, or simply watching the sunset without distraction can become powerful practices. These small moments act like anchors. They help steady the mind amid the movement of daily life. Many people resist this idea because they believe they are too busy. Yet busyness is often the very reason these moments are needed. When life becomes demanding, the natural instinct is to sacrifice rest and reflection in favor of productivity. Unfortunately, that decision usually creates even more stress. A mind that never pauses eventually becomes tired, distracted, and emotionally reactive. Peace is not a reward for finishing everything. It is a resource that helps you handle everything more effectively. Claire Donovan, an emergency dispatcher from Minneapolis, understood this struggle all too well. Her work required constant attention. Every shift brought urgent situations, difficult conversations, and high-pressure decisions. Over time, she found herself carrying that sense of urgency into every part of her life. Even when she was at home, her mind remained alert and tense. She felt as though she was always preparing for the next problem. One day, after discussing her stress with a close friend, Claire decided to create a simple ritual. Every morning, before checking her phone or beginning her day, she spent 15 minutes sitting quietly on her back porch. Sometimes she reflected on her thoughts. Sometimes she watched the sunrise. Sometimes she simply enjoyed the silence. At first, the practice felt insignificant, but after several weeks, she noticed a change. She felt calmer throughout the day. She reacted less impulsively to stressful situations. The challenges of her job remained the same, yet her relationship with those challenges began to change. That small island of peace had become a source of strength. There is an important distinction between escape and restoration. Many distractions provide temporary escape, but few provide genuine restoration. Endless scrolling, constant entertainment, and mindless consumption may distract us from stress for a short time, but they rarely leave us feeling renewed. Restoration occurs when the mind is given an opportunity to settle and recover. This is why simple activities often prove so effective. Walking, journaling, reading, praying, meditating, or sitting quietly in nature can restore energy in ways that constant stimulation cannot. Ancient wisdom consistently encouraged people to spend time in reflection because reflection creates perspective. During peaceful moments, worries often shrink to their proper size. Problems become easier to understand. Priorities become clearer. Many situations that seem urgent lose their intensity when viewed from a calmer state of mind. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means we become better equipped to face them. Another benefit of daily peace is that it strengthens awareness. When life is constantly busy, important experiences can pass unnoticed. A conversation with a loved one, a moment of gratitude, a beautiful morning, or a meaningful insight can easily be overlooked. Peace slows the mind enough to notice what is already present. In doing so, it enriches ordinary life. As you continue your journey toward simplicity, remember that peace rarely appears on its own. It must be invited. It must be given space. The world will always offer more noise, more demands, and more distractions. Waiting for those things to disappear is not a realistic strategy. Instead, create places within your day where they cannot follow you. Protect those moments carefully. A simple life is not free from responsibility, challenge, or uncertainty. It is simply a life that makes room for renewal. The more often you create these daily islands of peace, the more resilient, balanced, and grounded you become. Over time, those small moments begin to shape the entire landscape of your life. What starts as a few quiet minutes eventually becomes a calmer way of living. Chapter 7. Release the weight you were never meant to carry. Not every burden in life is visible. Some of the heaviest things people carry cannot be seen at all. Regret, resentment, guilt, disappointment, old failures, broken expectations, and painful memories often travel with us for years. They occupy space in the mind, drain emotional energy, and quietly influence how we experience the present. A person may appear successful, calm, and capable on the outside while carrying a tremendous amount of invisible weight within. One of the greatest lessons found in ancient wisdom is that suffering often continues long after an event has ended because the mind refuses to release it. The past may be gone, but its influence remains alive through repeated thought. A mistake made years ago can still shape today's emotions. An unfair experience can continue generating anger decades later. A lost opportunity can become a permanent source of regret. While remembering is natural, carrying these burdens indefinitely is not. At some point, what happened becomes less important than our relationship to what happened. Many people assume that holding on protects them in some way. They believe that maintaining resentment prevents future harm. They believe that replaying mistakes will help them avoid repeating them. They believe that refusing to forgive themselves is a sign of accountability. Yet in reality, excessive attachment to the past often creates more pain than wisdom. The lesson has already been learned, but the burden remains. The event is over, but the suffering continues. Ancient teachers frequently emphasized acceptance, not because they approved of every circumstance, but because they understood the limits of human control. There is no power in fighting yesterday. No amount of regret can rewrite a decision. No amount of anger can change an event that has already occurred. This does not mean the past should be ignored. It means the past should be understood, learned from, and then placed where it belongs. Behind you. One of the reasons letting go feels difficult is that people often confuse acceptance with approval. Accepting something does not mean you are happy it happened. It does not mean an injustice was acceptable. It does not mean a painful loss suddenly becomes pleasant. Acceptance simply means acknowledging reality as it is. It means recognizing that resistance cannot alter what has already occurred. Once that recognition takes place, energy that was previously spent fighting the past becomes available for living in the present. Wyatt Mercer, a construction company owner from Nashville, struggled with this lesson for years. Early in his career, he invested heavily in a development project that ultimately failed. The financial setback was significant, but the emotional impact was even greater. Although he eventually rebuilt his business and achieved success, he continued carrying the memory of that failure everywhere he went. Every new opportunity was filtered through fear. Every decision was influenced by old doubts. In many ways, the failed project remained more powerful in his mind than his later accomplishments. One evening, while reflecting on how much mental space that experience still occupied, Wyatt realized something important. The project had ended nearly a decade earlier, yet he was allowing it to affect decisions being made today. The event was in the past, but the burden remained present. Gradually, he began changing the way he viewed the experience. Instead of seeing it as evidence of failure, he saw it as part of his education. The loss remained real, but it no longer defined him. By releasing the emotional weight attached to that chapter of his life, he regained confidence that had been unavailable for years. The same principle applies to many forms of emotional baggage. Some people carry old arguments long after the relationship has changed. Others carry guilt over mistakes that no longer reflect who they are. Some hold on to expectations that life should have unfolded differently. The burden may vary from person to person, but the effect is often similar. Energy becomes trapped in what cannot be changed instead of invested in what can. A simple life requires learning to travel light emotionally. This does not mean becoming indifferent or pretending painful experiences never happened. It means refusing to allow those experiences to dominate the future. Every burden carried unnecessarily reduces the space available for joy, gratitude, growth, and peace. The mind can hold only so much at one time. When it remains crowded with old wounds, there is less room for new possibilities. Forgiveness often plays an important role in this process. Forgiveness is frequently misunderstood as something done for the benefit of another person. In reality, it is often done for your own freedom. Holding on to bitterness keeps you connected to the source of your pain. Letting go breaks that connection. It does not erase memory or remove consequences. It simply prevents the past from continuing to control the present. There is also wisdom in forgiving yourself. Every human being makes mistakes. Every life contains wrong turns, poor decisions, and moments of weakness. Expecting perfection is a recipe for lifelong frustration. Growth becomes possible when mistakes are treated as lessons rather than permanent identities. You are not the sum of your worst decisions. You are the person who can learn from them. As you move forward, take a moment to consider what weight you may still be carrying. Perhaps it is an old regret. Perhaps it is anger towards someone who hurt you. Perhaps it is disappointment over a path that never materialized. Whatever it may be, ask yourself whether carrying it is helping you or harming you. The answer may reveal more than you expect. A simple life is not achieved merely by removing physical clutter. It also requires clearing emotional clutter. The lighter you travel, the easier it becomes to appreciate the present moment. The past will always be part of your story, but it does not have to become your prison. Some burdens were never meant to be carried forever. Wisdom lies in knowing when it is time to set them down. Chapter 8. Return your attention to today. Life is always happening in the present moment, yet many people spend surprisingly little time there. The mind has a habit of wandering. It travels backward into memories, regrets, and old conversations. It travels forward into plans, worries, and imagined scenarios. While reflection and preparation certainly have their place, problems arise when the mind becomes trapped in places where the body cannot go. A person may be sitting in a beautiful room, sharing a meal with loved ones, or enjoying a peaceful afternoon, yet mentally they are somewhere else entirely. Ancient wisdom repeatedly encouraged people to return their attention to the present day. Not because the future was unimportant, and not because the past held no lessons, but because the present is the only place where life can actually be lived. Yesterday exists only as memory. Tomorrow exists only as possibility. Today is where choices are made, relationships are experienced, and life unfolds. When attention abandons the present too often, much of life passes unnoticed. One reason people struggle with this lesson is that the future can feel more important than the present. The mind tells us that peace will come later, after a problem is solved or a goal is reached. As a result, many people spend their days mentally rehearsing situations that have not happened yet. They worry about conversations that may never occur. They fear outcomes that may never materialize. They prepare for challenges that may never arrive. In doing so, they sacrifice the certainty of today for the uncertainty of tomorrow. The human mind often treats imagined problems as if they are real. A future event enters our thoughts, and the body responds with genuine stress. Heart rate increases, muscles tighten, anxiety grows, yet the situation causing the distress may exist only in imagination. Ancient thinkers observed this tendency long before modern psychology gave it a name. They recognized that much suffering comes not from reality itself, but from our interpretation of reality and our anticipation of events that have not yet happened. This does not mean planning is unnecessary. Responsible planning is part of a well-lived life. The difference lies in knowing when planning ends and worrying begins. Planning creates solutions. Worry creates cycles of thought that rarely produce anything useful. Planning focuses on actions that can be taken today. Worry focuses on outcomes that may be beyond our control. One is productive, the other is exhausting. Savannah Reed, a healthcare administrator from Phoenix, found herself caught in this pattern. Her position involved coordinating schedules, budgets, and long-term organizational goals. Over time, she became accustomed to thinking months ahead. Even when she left work, her mind remained occupied by future possibilities. She worried about upcoming meetings, potential problems, financial uncertainties, and countless situations that had not yet occurred. Friends noticed she seemed distracted. Family members often had to repeat themselves because her attention was somewhere else. Eventually, Savannah realized she was spending so much time preparing for the future that she was barely experiencing the present. She decided to make a simple change. Whenever she noticed her mind drifting into unnecessary worry, she redirected her attention to what was directly in front of her. If she was eating dinner, she focused on the meal. If she was talking with someone, she focused on the conversation. If she was taking a walk, she paid attention to her surroundings. The practice seemed small, but the effect was significant. She felt calmer, more grounded, and more connected to everyday life. The future still mattered, but it no longer dominated her attention. There is a reason many ancient traditions emphasized mindfulness, awareness, and presence. They understood that the quality of life depends largely on the quality of attention. Wherever attention goes, experience follows. If attention constantly lives in fear of tomorrow, life begins to feel anxious. If attention remains trapped in yesterday's disappointments, life begins to feel heavy. When attention returns to today, life becomes more manageable. Another benefit of focusing on the present is that today's challenges are usually smaller than the collection of imagined challenges created by the mind. Consider how often anxiety grows because multiple future problems are mentally combined into a single overwhelming burden. The mind jumps weeks, months, or even years ahead and attempts to solve everything at once. Naturally, this feels impossible. Yet when attention returns to today, the question becomes much simpler. What needs my attention right now? Often, the answer is far less intimidating. Ancient wisdom often encouraged people to think in terms of days rather than lifetimes. A single day can usually be handled. A single conversation can usually be managed. A single task can usually be completed. Problems become overwhelming when the mind gathers too many of them together. Simplicity requires breaking life back into manageable pieces and focusing on what can be done in the present moment. Returning your attention to today also increases gratitude. It is difficult to appreciate life while mentally living somewhere else. The warmth of sunlight, the comfort of home, the presence of loved ones, and the countless small blessings that fill ordinary days often go unnoticed because attention is occupied elsewhere. Presence allows these things to be seen again. As you continue this journey, remember that peace is rarely found by controlling the future. The future will always contain uncertainty. What you can control is where you place your attention. Every time you bring your awareness back to today, you reclaim a part of your life that might otherwise be lost to worry. You remind yourself that this moment matters, this conversation matters, this day matters. A simple life is not built 1 year at a time or 1 decade at a time. It is built 1 day at a time. The more often you return your attention to the day you are actually living, the richer and more peaceful that life becomes. Chapter 9. Walk away from needless drama. A peaceful life is shaped not only by what you choose to pursue, but also by what you choose to avoid. Many people spend years searching for greater calm, clarity, and happiness while remaining surrounded by unnecessary conflict. They invest emotional energy in arguments that lead nowhere, relationships that constantly create tension, and situations that repeatedly disturb their peace. Over time, they begin to believe that stress is simply a normal part of life. Yet ancient wisdom offers a different perspective. It teaches that one of the simplest ways to create a better life is to stop participating in battles that do not need to be fought. Drama has existed in every generation. The tools may change, but the patterns remain remarkably similar. People gossip, people compete for attention, people create conflicts, take offense, spread negativity, and involve themselves in matters that have little to do with them. What makes drama so powerful is that it often disguises itself as something important. It convinces people that they must respond, defend themselves, prove a point, or take a side. In reality, many conflicts lose their power the moment someone refuses to participate. Ancient philosophers often emphasized the importance of self-control because they understood that peace is frequently lost through reaction. A careless comment can ruin an entire day if you allow it. A disagreement can consume weeks of mental energy if you continue feeding it with attention. The more reactive a person becomes, the easier it is for external events to control their inner world. Simplicity requires a different approach. It asks you to pause and consider whether every conflict truly deserves your involvement. One of the most liberating realizations in life is understanding that not every opinion requires a response. Not every criticism requires a defense. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Many people exhaust themselves trying to manage how others perceive them. They explain, argue, justify, and defend at every opportunity. Yet much of this effort changes very little. The desire to control every narrative often creates more stress than the narrative itself. Needless drama thrives on attention. Without participation, it often fades naturally. Consider how many conflicts continue only because both sides refuse to let them end. One comment leads to another. One disagreement becomes a series of arguments. What began as a small issue grows into something much larger because neither person is willing to step away. Wisdom is not always found in winning. Sometimes it is found in refusing to play the game. Colton Hayes, a restaurant manager from Atlanta, learned this lesson through experience. His workplace was filled with constant tension. Employees frequently complained about one another, disagreements spread quickly, and small misunderstandings often turned into major conflicts. Colton found himself pulled into these situations daily. He spent hours listening to complaints, defending decisions, and managing arguments that rarely produced meaningful solutions. By the end of each week, he felt mentally exhausted. Eventually, Colton began changing his approach. Instead of becoming involved in every disagreement, he focused only on issues that genuinely required his attention. He stopped participating in gossip. He refused to engage in unnecessary arguments. When conflicts arose, he addressed practical solutions rather than emotional drama. At first, some people were surprised by his response. Over time, however, something interesting happened. Many situations resolved themselves without his involvement. The atmosphere around him became calmer because he was no longer adding energy to every source of tension. He discovered that peace often grows when unnecessary conflict is denied attention. Relationships also play a significant role in this chapter of simplicity. The people around you influence your thoughts, emotions, and habits more than you may realize. Spending time with individuals who constantly create chaos can gradually make chaos feel normal. Constant negativity, criticism, gossip, and conflict have a way of spreading. This does not mean abandoning people whenever they face difficulties. It means recognizing the difference between supporting someone through challenges and becoming trapped in patterns of dysfunction. Ancient wisdom consistently encouraged people to choose their companions carefully, not because perfection was expected, but because influence matters. A calm person can help create calm. A wise person can encourage wisdom. Likewise, a constantly dramatic environment can make peace difficult to maintain. Simplicity often requires setting healthy boundaries and protecting your emotional well-being. Another source of drama comes from our own minds. Sometimes the conflict we experience externally reflects conflict we are carrying internally. When the mind is restless, insecure, or overly concerned with approval, it becomes easier to get pulled into unnecessary disputes. This is why inner peace and outer peace are deeply connected. The calmer you become within yourself, the less attractive drama becomes. Situations that once felt urgent begin to appear insignificant. Arguments that once demanded attention lose their importance. There is great strength in learning to let certain things pass. This does not mean becoming passive or avoiding every difficult conversation. Some issues genuinely require action. Some problems need to be addressed directly. The key is learning to distinguish between meaningful challenges and unnecessary distractions. One deserves your energy, the other simply consumes it. As you continue simplifying your life, take a closer look at the sources of tension that surround you. Consider how much time and emotional energy are being spent on conflicts that provide little value. Ask yourself whether every battle you are fighting is truly worth the cost. In many cases, the answer may be no. A simple life becomes possible when you stop carrying burdens that do not belong to you. The same principle applies to conflict. Not every disagreement deserves your participation. Not every drama deserves your attention. The more carefully you choose where to invest your energy, the more peace you create for yourself and those around you. Sometimes the wisest step forward is not to engage, react, or fight. Sometimes it is simply to walk away and continue living your life. Chapter 10. Stop measuring your life against others. Few habits create more unnecessary dissatisfaction than comparison. It quietly enters the mind, changes the way we view ourselves, and steals enjoyment from experiences that once felt meaningful. A person can be grateful, content, and confident one moment, then encounter someone who appears more successful, more attractive, wealthier, or more accomplished, and suddenly feel inadequate. Nothing in their actual life has changed. Their circumstances remain exactly the same. Yet their perception changes, and with it, their peace. Comparison is not a modern invention. Human beings have always looked at one another and measured differences. Ancient wisdom recognized this tendency long before social media amplified it. Philosophers and teachers repeatedly warned against making other people's lives the standard by which our own lives are judged. They understood that comparison creates a game that cannot be won because there will always be someone ahead in one area or another. If self-worth depends on being superior to others, satisfaction becomes fragile and temporary. One reason comparison is so deceptive is that it encourages people to focus on appearances rather than reality. We rarely compare our full lives to another person's full life. Instead, we compare our private struggles to their public successes. We compare our behind-the-scenes reality to the polished image they present to the world. Naturally, this creates an unfair contest. Every person carries challenges, disappointments, fears, and uncertainties that are not immediately visible. Yet comparison often ignores these realities and focuses only on what can be seen. Ancient thinkers often emphasized the importance of self-knowledge because they understood that fulfillment comes from living according to your own values rather than someone else's expectations. A life that looks impressive to others is not necessarily a good life. A life that brings peace, purpose, and integrity may appear ordinary from the outside while being deeply fulfilling from within. The challenge is having the wisdom to recognize this distinction. Many people spend years pursuing goals they never truly chose for themselves. They chase lifestyles they believe they should want because those lifestyles appear desirable in comparison to others. They seek achievements that earn admiration but fail to bring personal meaning. In doing so, they gradually lose connection with what genuinely matters to them. Comparison shifts attention outward, while wisdom encourages attention inward. Autumn Blake, a professional photographer from San Diego, experienced this struggle firsthand. She had built a successful career doing work she genuinely enjoyed. For many years, she felt proud of what she had accomplished. However, as social media became a larger part of her industry, she found herself constantly observing the work and lifestyles of other photographers. Some traveled more, some appeared to have larger audiences, others seemed to earn greater recognition. Gradually, she stopped appreciating her own achievements and began focusing almost entirely on what she lacked. What troubled Autumn most was that her dissatisfaction grew even while her career continued improving. New opportunities, satisfied clients, and personal milestones brought only temporary satisfaction because her attention quickly shifted back to comparison. Eventually, she recognized that she was evaluating her life according to standards created by other people. She decided to spend less time monitoring what others were doing and more time focusing on her own work, values, and goals. The change did not happen overnight, but over time, she rediscovered a sense of appreciation for the life she had already built. Nothing external needed to change. What changed was where she directed her attention. Comparison often creates two different forms of suffering. The first occurs when we believe others have more than we do. This leads to envy, dissatisfaction, and feelings of inadequacy. The second occurs when we believe we have more than others. This can create arrogance, fear of losing status, and a constant need to maintain superiority. In both cases, peace becomes dependent on external measurements. Neither path leads to lasting contentment. A simple life requires a different approach. Instead of asking how you compare to others, ask whether you are living according to your own principles. Are you becoming a wiser person? Are you treating people well? Are you using your time in meaningful ways? Are you growing in the areas that matter most to you? These questions create a healthier foundation for self-evaluation because they focus on personal development rather than competition. There is also great freedom in recognizing that every life follows a different path. Some people find success early, others find it later. Some build families. Others pursue different forms of fulfillment. Some value adventure. Others value stability. Comparing journeys that follow different destinations rarely produces useful insight. Life is not a race with a universal finish line. It is a personal journey shaped by individual values, priorities, and circumstances. Ancient wisdom often encouraged gratitude because gratitude and comparison cannot comfortably exist together. The more attention you give to what is already present in your life, the less power comparison holds over you. Gratitude reminds you that value exists here and now, not only in the achievements or possessions of others. It shifts focus from scarcity to abundance, from competition to appreciation. As you continue simplifying your life, pay close attention to the standards you use to judge yourself. Ask whether those standards truly belong to you or whether they have been borrowed from society, culture, or comparison. A meaningful life is not built by constantly measuring yourself against other people. It is built by becoming the person you are capable of becoming. Peace grows when you stop looking sideways and start looking inward. The moment you stop measuring your life against others, you gain the freedom to fully live your own. In the end, the goal is not to have more than someone else. The goal is to live wisely, intentionally, and gratefully with what is already yours. Chapter 11. Build your life around what endures. A great deal of human frustration comes from investing too much energy in things that do not last. Trends change, public opinion shifts. Wealth can rise and fall. Positions of influence eventually pass to someone else. Even the goals that seem urgent today may lose their importance with time. Ancient wisdom consistently encouraged people to look beyond temporary rewards and focus instead on what endures. The reason is simple. A life built upon unstable foundations often feels unstable. A life built upon lasting values remains steady even when circumstances change. Modern life places tremendous emphasis on what is immediate. We are encouraged to seek quick results, immediate gratification, and visible achievements. There is nothing inherently wrong with accomplishment. The danger appears when temporary success becomes the primary measure of a meaningful life. If happiness depends entirely on external achievements, peace becomes vulnerable to forces beyond our control. A promotion can be delayed, a business can struggle, recognition can fade. When identity is tied too closely to these things, emotional stability rises and falls with them. Ancient philosophers often asked a simple question: what will still matter years from now? It is a powerful question because it helps separate what is truly important from what merely feels urgent. Many concerns that dominate attention today will eventually be forgotten. Arguments that seem significant may become irrelevant. Possessions that appear valuable may lose their appeal. Yet certain things maintain their importance across decades and even generations. Character, wisdom, kindness, integrity, meaningful relationships, and personal growth continue to matter regardless of changing circumstances. A simple life requires learning to distinguish between what is temporary and what is lasting. This does not mean ignoring practical responsibilities or refusing to pursue goals. It means ensuring that temporary pursuits do not come at the expense of enduring values. A person may achieve impressive success while neglecting relationships. Another may accumulate wealth while sacrificing health. Someone else may earn admiration while losing peace of mind. From the outside, these individuals may appear successful. Internally, however, they often feel something important is missing. One reason enduring values are so powerful is that they remain available in every season of life. Wealth may fluctuate, but integrity can remain. Careers may change, but wisdom can continue growing. Circumstances may become difficult, but kindness and character remain choices. These qualities cannot guarantee a perfect life, but they create a strong foundation from which to face whatever life brings. Griffin Rhodes, a technology consultant from Charlotte, spent much of his early career focused on achievement. He was ambitious, hard-working, and highly motivated. Success came quickly, and with it came larger projects, greater responsibilities, and increased income. For several years, he believed he was building exactly the life he wanted. Yet as time passed, he noticed a growing sense of emptiness. Despite professional accomplishments, he felt disconnected from many of the things that once mattered to him. One evening, after reviewing a packed calendar filled almost entirely with work commitments, Griffin asked himself a difficult question. If he continued living exactly as he was, what would his life look like 10 years later? The answer unsettled him. He realized that many of the things receiving the most attention were not the things he valued most deeply. Gradually, he began making adjustments. He invested more time in family relationships. He prioritized health. He resumed reading and learning outside of his profession. His career remained important, but it no longer occupied the center of his identity. By shifting his focus toward what would still matter years later, he experienced a greater sense of balance and fulfillment. Ancient wisdom reminds us that time is one of life's most valuable resources. Unlike money, it cannot be replenished once spent. Every day represents an investment. The question is not whether we are investing our time. The question is what we are investing it in. When attention is directed primarily toward temporary concerns, years can pass without meaningful progress in the areas that truly matter. A simple life encourages regular reflection on where time, energy, and attention are being placed. Relationships provide one of the clearest examples of enduring value. At the end of life, very few people wish they had spent more time worrying about minor inconveniences or accumulating additional possessions. Many wish they had spent more time with people they cared about. Human connection remains one of the most reliable sources of meaning and fulfillment. Yet because relationships often develop slowly and quietly, they can be overshadowed by louder demands. Simplicity helps restore proper perspective. Wisdom itself is another enduring investment. Knowledge of current events may become outdated. Professional skills may require updating. Yet wisdom, the ability to understand life clearly and make sound decisions, continues to provide value across changing circumstances. This is why thoughtful reflection, reading, learning, and self-examination have been treasured throughout history. They strengthen qualities that remain useful regardless of external conditions. Building your life around what endures does not require dramatic change. Often it begins with small adjustments in attention. It begins by asking different questions. Instead of asking what will impress others, ask what will matter in the long run. Instead of asking what brings immediate satisfaction, ask what creates lasting value. Instead of asking what appears successful, ask what feels meaningful. As you continue your journey toward a simpler life, remember that not everything deserves equal importance. Some things pass quickly, others remain. The wise person learns to recognize the difference. A peaceful life is rarely built on temporary achievements alone. It is built on foundations that can withstand the passing of time. When you focus on what endures, decisions become clearer. Priorities become easier to identify. Life becomes less cluttered by distractions and more aligned with what truly matters. In the end, simplicity is not about having less for the sake of having less. It is about creating more room for the things that will still hold value long after everything else has faded. Chapter 12. Depend less on the approval of others. One of the quietest sources of stress in human life is the desire to be approved of. It often begins early. People learn to seek praise, avoid criticism, and measure their worth through the reactions of those around them. While there is nothing wrong with appreciating encouragement or wanting healthy relationships, problems arise when approval becomes a necessity rather than a preference. The moment your peace depends on how others see you, your peace is no longer entirely your own. Ancient wisdom consistently pointed toward inner independence. Wise thinkers understood that human opinions are unpredictable. They change with circumstances, emotions, trends, and personal interests. A person who is admired today may be criticized tomorrow. Someone who is ignored today may be celebrated in the future. If self-worth rises and falls according to public opinion, life becomes an exhausting emotional roller coaster. The pursuit of approval creates a moving target because it places happiness in the hands of people whose judgments are constantly changing. Many people do not realize how much of their behavior is influenced by this desire. They hesitate to speak honestly because they fear disapproval. They make decisions based on what others expect rather than what feels right to them. They choose careers, lifestyles, and goals that earn admiration but fail to bring fulfillment. Over time, they may achieve acceptance while losing connection with themselves. From the outside, everything appears successful. Internally, however, there is often a growing sense of dissatisfaction. One of the reasons approval is so attractive is that it provides temporary reassurance. When others praise us, agree with us, or admire our accomplishments, we feel validated. The problem is that validation from others is rarely permanent. Once received, it often needs to be received again. A compliment feels good for a moment, then fades. Recognition brings satisfaction, then new expectations appear. The cycle continues, creating dependence rather than freedom. Ancient philosophers encouraged people to focus on character rather than reputation. Reputation exists in the minds of others. Character exists within you. Reputation can be misunderstood, distorted, or unfairly judged. Character remains under your control. This distinction is important because it redirects attention towards something stable. Instead of asking whether everyone approves of you, the question becomes whether you are living according to your values. Delaney Brooks, a public speaker from Tampa, spent years building her confidence around audience reactions. Every presentation, workshop, and appearance felt like a test of her worth. Positive feedback energized her. Criticism affected her deeply. Even minor negative comments could occupy her thoughts for days. While her career appeared successful, her emotional well-being remained tied to factors she could not control. Over time, Delaney began noticing a pattern. No matter how well she performed, universal approval never arrived. Some people appreciated her work, others did not. Some agreed with her ideas, others disagreed. The more she reflected on this reality, the more she understood that seeking complete approval was impossible. She gradually shifted her focus. Instead of measuring success by audience reactions, she measured it by preparation, effort, honesty, and integrity. She still valued feedback, but she no longer depended on it for self-worth. The result was unexpected freedom. Her confidence became steadier because it was rooted in something more reliable than public opinion. A simple life requires this kind of independence because approval-seeking creates complexity. It encourages constant comparison, second-guessing, and emotional instability. Decisions become more difficult because every choice must be filtered through the question of how others will respond. Authenticity becomes harder because fear of judgment influences behavior. Simplicity asks a different question. What do you believe is right, meaningful, and worthwhile? This does not mean ignoring all feedback. Wisdom includes the ability to learn from others. Constructive criticism can be valuable. Advice from trusted individuals can provide important perspective. The goal is not isolation. The goal is balance. There is a difference between considering the opinions of others and becoming controlled by them. One reflects openness. The other creates dependence. Another challenge is accepting that criticism is an unavoidable part of life. No matter how carefully you live, some people will misunderstand your intentions. Some will disagree with your choices. Others may judge you unfairly. Ancient thinkers recognized this reality and advised people not to waste energy fighting every opinion. Trying to satisfy everyone often results in satisfying no one, including yourself. There is great peace in accepting that approval is not a requirement for a meaningful life. Some of the wisest decisions you will ever make may be misunderstood by others. Some of the most important changes in your life may not receive applause. Yet, if those decisions align with your values and contribute to your growth, they remain worthwhile regardless of external reaction. The more you depend on approval, the more power you give away. The more you trust your own judgment, the more freedom you gain. This does not happen instantly. It develops gradually through practice. Each time you act according to your principles instead of seeking validation, inner confidence grows stronger. Each time you choose authenticity over popularity, self-respect deepens. As you continue simplifying your life, consider where the desire for approval may still be influencing your decisions. Ask yourself whether you are pursuing certain goals because they genuinely matter to you or because they might impress others. Reflect on whether your choices reflect your values or someone else's expectations. Chapter 13. Practice simplicity until it becomes natural. A simple life is not created through a single decision. It is created through repeated choices. Many people encounter ideas about simplicity, feel inspired for a short period, make a few changes, and then gradually return to old habits. This happens because simplicity is not a destination that can be reached once and permanently maintained. It is a practice. Like any worthwhile practice, it requires consistency, awareness, and patience. The goal is not merely to simplify your life for a season. The goal is to make simplicity such a natural part of your thinking that it becomes the way you live. Throughout this audiobook, we have explored many principles. We have discussed removing what adds no value, wanting less, slowing down, protecting your mind from noise, defining enough, creating moments of peace, releasing emotional burdens, focusing on today, avoiding unnecessary drama, escaping comparison, building your life around what endures, and depending less on approval. These ideas are powerful individually, but their greatest strength appears when they begin working together. Simplicity is not one habit, it is a way of approaching life. Ancient wisdom often emphasized practice because knowledge alone is rarely enough. A person may understand the value of patience and still become impatient. They may understand the importance of gratitude and still complain. They may understand the benefits of simplicity and still become distracted by unnecessary pursuits. Understanding creates possibility. Practice creates transformation. The gap between knowing and living is bridged through consistent action. One of the reasons simplicity requires ongoing attention is that the world constantly encourages the opposite. New distractions appear every day. New desires are presented. New pressures emerge. Without awareness, life naturally becomes more complicated over time. Possessions accumulate, commitments multiply, worries expand. Simplicity requires periodically stepping back and asking whether what has entered your life truly belongs there. This process is similar to tending a garden. A garden does not remain healthy because it was once organized. It remains healthy because it is regularly maintained. Weeds are removed, growth is guided, space is protected. The same principle applies to life. Simplicity is not preserved through one major effort. It is preserved through small acts of maintenance repeated over time. Camden Ellis, a business owner from Salt Lake City, spent years searching for balance. Whenever life felt overwhelming, he would make temporary changes. He would clean his schedule, reorganize his priorities, and simplify certain aspects of his routine. For a few weeks, everything would feel better. Then, gradually, new commitments would appear. Additional responsibilities would accumulate. Before long, he would find himself feeling overwhelmed once again. Eventually, Camden realized the problem was not his ability to simplify. The problem was that he viewed simplicity as an occasional project rather than a daily practice. He began setting aside time each month to evaluate different areas of his life. He reviewed his commitments, spending habits, goals, and routines. Instead of waiting until stress became overwhelming, he addressed complexity before it had a chance to grow. Over time, simplicity stopped feeling like something he had to force. It became part of how he made decisions. Life still contained challenges, but it felt far more manageable because he was consistently protecting what mattered most. One of the most important aspects of practicing simplicity is learning to pause before adding something new. Before accepting a commitment, making a purchase, pursuing a goal, or adopting a responsibility, it is helpful to ask a simple question. Will this improve my life or complicate it? Not every opportunity deserves acceptance. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every desire deserves action. Simplicity often grows through thoughtful restraint rather than constant expansion. Another valuable practice is regularly returning to your core values. Complexity tends to increase when life becomes disconnected from what matters most. When values are clear, decisions become easier. You know what deserves attention and what does not. You know which opportunities align with your priorities and which distractions can be declined. Ancient wisdom consistently encouraged people to live according to principles rather than impulses, because principles provide stability in a changing world. There is also wisdom in accepting that perfection is unnecessary. Some people approach simplicity with unrealistic expectations. They imagine a life completely free from stress, clutter, conflict, or uncertainty. Such a life does not exist. Simplicity is not about creating perfect conditions. It is about responding wisely to imperfect conditions. There will still be busy days. There will still be challenges. There will still be moments of frustration. The difference is that simplicity provides a framework for navigating those experiences with greater calm and clarity. As the practice deepens, something interesting begins to happen. Decisions require less effort. Contentment becomes easier. External pressures lose some of their influence. You become less interested in impressing others and more interested in living intentionally. You become less distracted by what is unnecessary and more focused on what is meaningful. Simplicity gradually shifts from being something you do to something you are. This transformation does not happen overnight. It develops through countless small choices. Every time you remove something unnecessary, you strengthen the habit. Every time you choose peace over chaos, presence over distraction, or gratitude over dissatisfaction, you reinforce a simpler way of living. These moments may seem insignificant individually, but together they shape the direction of a life. As you prepare for the final chapter of this audiobook, remember that simplicity is not a finish line waiting somewhere in the future. It is a practice available to you today. The goal is not to create a perfect life. The goal is to create a life that feels lighter, clearer, and more aligned with what truly matters. The more consistently you practice simplicity, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, what once required effort begins to feel like second nature. And that is when simplicity stops being an idea and becomes a way of life. Chapter 14. Live lightly, live peacefully. As we arrive at the final chapter of this journey, it is worth remembering that simplicity has never been about having the fewest possessions, following a strict set of rules, or withdrawing from the modern world. At its heart, simplicity is about freedom. It is about removing what is unnecessary so that what is truly important can receive your full attention. It is about creating a life that feels lighter, calmer, and more meaningful. Not because life itself becomes easier, but because you learn how to carry it more wisely. Throughout history, people have searched for peace in many places. Some looked for it in wealth. Others sought it in achievement, status, influence, or recognition. Yet the wisdom that has survived through generations points toward a different truth. Peace is rarely found by adding more. More often, it is found by learning when enough is enough. It appears when the mind stops constantly reaching for what it does not have and begins appreciating what is already present. One of the greatest misunderstandings about peace is the belief that it arrives when all problems disappear. Life does not work that way. Every stage of life brings new challenges. Every season introduces different responsibilities. Even the most thoughtful and disciplined people encounter setbacks, disappointments, and uncertainty. The goal of simplicity is not to eliminate difficulty. The goal is to prevent unnecessary difficulty from dominating your life. There is a profound difference between carrying life's natural burdens and carrying burdens you have chosen through distraction, excess, comparison, worry, and endless wanting. Living lightly begins with understanding what deserves your energy. Not every opportunity requires acceptance. Not every conflict deserves a response. Not every opinion deserves consideration. Not every desire deserves pursuit. A significant portion of modern stress comes from treating everything as equally important. Simplicity teaches the opposite. It encourages discernment. It asks you to identify what truly matters and give those things your attention while allowing the rest to pass by. This way of living requires courage because the world often rewards complexity. Busyness is frequently mistaken for importance. Accumulation is often mistaken for success. Constant activity is sometimes confused with progress. Yet wisdom asks deeper questions. Are you at peace? Are you living according to your values? Are your days aligned with what matters most? These questions cut through appearances and lead directly to the heart of a meaningful life. There is something remarkably powerful about becoming comfortable with less. When you need less approval, you gain independence. When you need fewer possessions, you gain freedom. When you need less control over circumstances, you gain resilience. When you need less validation from the outside world, you gain confidence from within. Simplicity is not a loss, it is a shift. You exchange dependence for freedom, distraction for clarity, and restlessness for contentment. Ancient wisdom consistently reminded people that life is temporary. This was not meant to create fear, it was meant to create perspective. When viewed through the lens of time, many concerns begin to shrink. Arguments lose their urgency. Comparisons lose their significance. Possessions lose some of their importance. What remains are the things that endure: character, relationships, wisdom, gratitude, kindness, and the quality of the life you create day by day. This perspective invites a different approach to success. Rather than asking how much you can accumulate, you begin asking how well you can live. Rather than measuring life by external achievements alone, you begin evaluating it through the lens of meaning and fulfillment. Success becomes less about impressing others and more about living in harmony with your values. This shift often brings a surprising sense of relief because it replaces endless striving with intentional living. Living lightly also means accepting the imperfection of life. Simplicity is not about controlling every outcome. It is about responding thoughtfully to whatever outcomes arise. Some days will go according to plan, others will not. Some seasons will feel easy, others will require patience and strength. Peace does not come from perfect circumstances. It comes from developing the ability to remain grounded regardless of circumstances. As you move forward from this audiobook, remember that simplicity is not something you achieve once and never revisit. It is a practice of continual return. There will be times when life becomes crowded again. New responsibilities will appear. New distractions will compete for your attention. Old habits may occasionally resurface. When that happens, return to the principles you have explored throughout these chapters. Return to clarity. Return to gratitude. Return to presence. Return to what truly matters. A simple life is not an ordinary life made smaller. It is an ordinary life experienced more deeply. It allows you to notice things that constant busyness often hides. It helps you appreciate moments that might otherwise pass unnoticed. It creates space for reflection, connection, and joy. Most importantly, it reminds you that peace is not waiting somewhere in the future. It is available whenever you choose to live with greater intention. The ancient wisdom explored throughout this audiobook has endured because it speaks to something timeless within human nature. The world may continue changing, but the need for peace remains the same. The desire for meaning remains the same. The search for a life well lived remains the same. Live lightly. Live thoughtfully. Live with gratitude for what you already have and wisdom about what you truly need. In doing so, you may discover that the peace you have been searching for was never far away. It was waiting beneath the noise, beyond the clutter, and underneath the unnecessary weight all along. Conclusion. As this journey comes to an end, it is worth pausing for a moment and reflecting on what we have explored together. At first glance, the lessons in this audiobook may seem simple. Remove what adds no value. Want less. Slow down. Protect your mind. Create peace. Let go of unnecessary burdens. Focus on today. Avoid needless drama. Build your life around what truly matters. Yet beneath these ideas lies a profound truth that has guided thoughtful people for centuries. A peaceful life is not created by accident. It is created through conscious choices. The world will always offer reasons to become distracted. It will encourage you to chase more, compare yourself to others, worry about the future, revisit the past, and fill every available moment with noise. In many ways, complexity is the default setting of modern life. Simplicity, on the other hand, is a deliberate act. It requires awareness, it requires discipline, it requires the courage to question assumptions that many people accept without reflection. What makes simplicity so powerful is that it does not depend on wealth, status, age, education, or circumstance. Anyone can begin simplifying. Anyone can choose to protect their attention. Anyone can decide to let go of a grudge, spend less time worrying, or appreciate what they already have. The path is available to everyone because it begins not with external conditions, but with internal decisions. Perhaps the most important lesson of all is that peace is rarely found where people are taught to look for it. It is not hiding inside a larger paycheck, a more impressive title, a perfect schedule, or universal approval. While these things may provide temporary satisfaction, lasting peace comes from something deeper. It comes from alignment. It comes from living in a way that reflects your values rather than your impulses. It comes from knowing what matters and having the wisdom to give those things your attention. As you move forward, remember that simplicity does not require perfection. There will be days when life feels busy. There will be moments when you become distracted, overwhelmed, or pulled in directions that do not serve you. This is part of being human. The goal is not to avoid every mistake. The goal is to return again and again to the principles that create clarity. Each time you notice unnecessary complexity entering your life, you have an opportunity to simplify. Each time you notice yourself carrying a burden that no longer belongs to you, you have an opportunity to release it. Think about how different life can feel when you stop measuring your worth against other people. Consider the freedom that comes from defining your own version of enough. Imagine how much energy becomes available when you stop fighting every opinion, chasing every desire, and worrying about every possible future. These changes may appear small from the outside, yet they often transform the entire experience of living. The ancient wisdom behind this audiobook has endured because it addresses challenges that are timeless. Human beings have always struggled with desire, distraction, fear, comparison, and uncertainty. Technology changes, cultures evolve, societies transform, yet the human search for peace remains remarkably consistent. The same principles that helped thoughtful people centuries ago continue to offer guidance today because they speak to fundamental aspects of human nature. If there is one idea worth carrying with you after this audiobook ends, let it be this: a meaningful life is usually simpler than people imagine. It is found in ordinary moments, thoughtful decisions, meaningful relationships, useful work, gratitude, and presence. It is found in appreciating what is here rather than constantly chasing what is elsewhere. It is found in recognizing that enough can be enough. The art of a simple life is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about engaging with the world more wisely. It is about choosing quality over quantity, meaning over excess, and peace over constant striving. It is about learning to walk through life with a lighter step and a clearer mind. Years from now, you may not remember every chapter of this audiobook. You may not remember every example or every lesson. But if you remember to pause before adding unnecessary complexity, if you remember to protect your peace, and if you remember to focus on what truly matters, then these ideas will continue serving you long after the final words have been spoken. Thank you for taking this journey. May you move forward with greater clarity, greater intention, and a deeper appreciation for the simple things that make life rich. And may you discover again and again that peace is not something waiting at the end of the road. It is something that can accompany you every step of the way.